let me bring on Alex Nestor, an investigative fellow for Parents Defending Education. Before joining Parents Defending Education, Alex reported on education at the Washington Free Beacon and produced podcasts for Nebulous Media. Alex, welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So, a letter your organization sent out to 34 states, superintendents in those states, where you found a connection between education and the Communist Party of China. What did you find?
Yeah, well, it's a big connection and one that I think is really underexplored. Last summer, we released a report called Little Red Classrooms. As part of that report, we found that 143 schools or school districts in the United States, spanning in 34 states plus Washington, D.C., had fostered ties to the Chinese Ministry of Education or CCP, Chinese Communist Party affiliated groups, to ostensibly provide Chinese language and culture programming for people-to-people exchanges, what have you.
Wow.
So with that report last summer, that's what we found there. 2 weeks back now, the House subcommittee on the CCP revealed some frightening revelations as part of a hearing, including that Chinese hackers had attempted to embed malware into a Texas electric grid, and Chinese hackers had tried to disrupt critical water infrastructure. So putting these two pieces together, our question is, what was the Chinese government able to access as part of these connections to our schools? Because let's make one thing clear. The Chinese Communist Party does not have the best interest of our students at heart. So it's really unclear what the Chinese government was able to access, and we are asking states to take action to figure that out and to protect students and the American public.
Well, GovEd and the CCP have that in common. They don't have America's children's best interests at heart. Let me ask you, when you confronted these school districts, such as they are, were they aware of their connections with the Communist Party of China?
I think a lot of them are, in a way, and then I don't think necessarily they realize the potential harms there. I think all of this sounds good, just like when we talk about things like, anti-racism or social emotional learning. These things sound good. When we have these ties, it sounds good to provide Chinese language and culture programming. And it is. Kids should have these opportunities, but they should have opportunities also to learn about, say, Tiananmen Square massacre. Like those types of things are not going to be included in these types of lessons when they're provided by the Chinese Ministry of Education or by, CCP affiliated groups. So again, all of these things sound good to have in schools, and I think that's part of our mission from day one as Parents Defending Education is to just look under the hood, dig a little deeper, and figure out what's going on. And again, when, the Chinese government is dictating what kids are learning about Chinese language and culture, that's not a good thing. That they're not actually learning real history.
Right.
So that's a huge issue.
Well, yes, and then you know what? Because we have guys like Joe Biden or his regime in charge, because we have Republicans like Mitch McConnell and John Cornyn in charge, yeah, your children might need to learn to speak Mandarin out of necessity very, very soon. So were you able to determine, Alex, what type of agenda was being pushed onto American school districts by the Communist Party? What type of information what are they trying to sow into young minds when they're not being indoctrinated through TikTok? What are they being subjected to in GovEd being influenced by Communist China? What are our students in for?
So I will give a more recent example that we learned post our report from last summer. Tacoma High School in Washington, or Tacoma Public Schools in Washington, Lincoln High School, actually sent a group of choir students to the conference in San Francisco last fall in November that Xi Jinping was there. Huh. This group of students sang happy birthday to his wife and gave her a birthday card. So, what exactly does that say here? It's pretty concerning when we have American schools who, don't want to teach about our founding fathers because of, America's sins in our past and the terrible things that we've done. Yet, they want to welcome and celebrate someone who's actively, rounding up Uyghur Muslims in Xinjiang and putting them in concentration camps. So it goes to show that it's a very distorted, political agenda that these kids are learning, and one that is more favorable to the Chinese Communist Party than the United States.
True.
That is so unbelievable. And then a couple examples from our report from last summer, like I mentioned, Chinese language and culture programming, at times that was taught by a teacher who was tapped by the Chinese government to come to the United States and teach. In one extreme example, there were Chinese diplomats who took information from our top science and tech high school, Thomas Jefferson High School for Science and Technology in Virginia, and went back to China and made a string of schools called Thomas schools. So it's very clear that our freedom is being weaponized against us, and our leaders need to step up and stop this.
Well, folks, what you got to know is the education system, the gov-ed education system, is dominated by leftists. In the United States of America, you're forced to pay their salaries, you're forced to pay for their agenda. And learning that our students are being instructed to praise the leaders of a genocidal, racist, slave state like communist China, all in service to collectivism and absolute government power, should send alarm bells across this entire country. Alex Nestor is our guest, investigative fellow for Parents Defending Education. How pervasive, I should say, is the infection? How far does this reach into GovEd? How deeply are China's financial tentacles penetrating into GovEd?
Yeah, so there's good news and there's bad news, right? The good news is, from our report, there are only 7 districts right now that we know of, to be clear, that have active ties to Confucius classrooms or Confucius Institutes. We know from our friends at the National Association of Scholars that the Confucius Institutes, which is, the higher education, university-based programming, that those at one time numbered to be, I think, about 120 in the United States and have now dwindled to only a handful. So the number is going down, especially after the 2020 report from the State Department that found that this is an active propaganda arm of the Chinese Communist Party. So the number has gone down. However, we know that the Chinese government, through funding and through other mechanisms, they're not giving up on this. They've said as much that this is a huge push, that this is a huge priority of theirs to expand Confucius Institutes and classrooms in the United States. So we know it's not really going anywhere. It's probably just hiding under the surface, and more research needs to be done to figure out exactly where and exactly how this is happening. In part, we know a little bit of that. A part of that answer is through organizations like Asia Society or other nonprofits working in states that will get grants from the Chinese Ministry of Education to then offer, the language and culture programming or what have you in schools. So really, good news, the number is going down, sort of, and then the bad news is we really don't know what is exactly happening now to make up for the reduction in Confucius Institutes.
Right.
And Confucius.
We don't know how deep the infection goes, China's infection of the United States of America. Last question I have. Since our government isn't arrayed at protecting our people on various levels, and I can say that unequivocally, I can say that this government has been turned against our people in the finest tradition of communism. What can parents do to protect their children from an agenda that is being unleashed on them by left-wing Democrats, the communist China agenda unleashed on their children by Democrats in GovEd? What can parents do to defend them?
Well, look, we're, 4 years now into this battle for parental rights, and I think what's been very cool to see over time is that parents aren't backing down. Parents are standing up. They will go to the school board with concerns. Even when they are shunned, silenced, and shut out from those conversations, they continue to take a stand, and that has been so encouraging to see. So, we always encourage parents to ask questions. We've got resources on our website, questions you can ask your school board about X issue, whether it's social emotional learning or divisive race ideology, what have you. I think the biggest thing that parents should do is to be informed. Read over your school policies, read over your state laws, know what governs, your rights over, your kids' education. I think that's really important for parents to be informed and to speak up when they see something going awry.
Yep, and any politician or any group that wants to deny parental school choice and education freedom, they are complicit. And colluding with an enemy, whether they know it or not. Alex Nestor, investigative fellow for Parents Defending Education. Thanks for the update. Appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for having me.